Bandersnatch is not an interactive piece of media. The information available online is mostly correct. It was created in 2018 by Charlie Brooker and directed by David Slade. It is an hour and 30 minutes long. It does star Will Poulter and Finn Whitehead, and it is a work of science fiction. There is also a lot of incorrect information, like the fact that it's an interactive film. That's the only one. Bandersnatch is a poem or creature devised by Lewis Carroll in 1874. Bandersnatch was a game planned for release by Imagine Software in 1984 that never actually came to fruition. And now, Bandersnatch is a film, full stop. If Bandersnatch was in fact an interactive piece of media, viewing it as such is a lackluster and unfulfilling experience. It appears to follow typical video game logic, where it uses its first moments to teach you the basics and then sets you free to explore the various timelines. Going through the different scenes in this way has a tendency to make them link together in ways that are not inherently impactful or fail to tell what can be considered a coherent story. On my first viewing of Bandersnatch, I was hooked with the idea of solving this puzzle and stayed up way past my bedtime trying every avenue in the labyrinthine mess until it was the next day and I was left without a satisfying ending, or an ending at all. In a choose-your-own-adventure novel or game, it's the joy of reaching dead ends or strange endings but then going back and trying again that leads to any sort of entertainment, or getting an ending that your friend didn't get and sharing with each other the mysteries of each one. That's the medium. But doing such on a streaming platform like Netflix, a thing that will not be updated with patches or inundated with new endings, is an impossible task, especially in the realm of film, an inherently non-interactive media. Back in the early 2010s, there was a large ruckus on YouTube when the platform pushed the idea of interactive videos. The now outdated annotations allowed creators to link several smaller videos together so that the watchers could make decisions and follow down different paths. This turned out to be little more than a gimmick and fell to the wayside, for the simple fact that YouTube videos are meant to be watched and shared, not played like a game. Bandersnatch, when viewed like a film, is the full package, beginning, middle, and end, character arcs, story, all the things you'd expect from a Netflix-funded venture. But then where does the confusion lie? Why the mix-up thinking it's an interactive piece of media? I think it's in those answers that I found an amazing film, something worthy of a big stamp that says art, a film that I've come back to several times, always finding something new to dig into. Bandersnatch opens with 80s music and Stefan, our main character, already in the throes of a mega project, adapting the sprawling choose-your-own-adventure book Bandersnatch into a video game. The film starts here because today is the day Stefan has a meeting with Tuckersoft, a game developer behind some of the biggest games in the world. This is truly the most important day for Stefan. Not the day he read the book, not the day he began working on the project, but the day he's going to demo it. Stefan's father is introduced through a suspicious camera shot of him locking his office door, a form of Chekhov's gun that we can just call Chekhov's office, followed by a father-son tension that is palpably uncomfortable. In their banter, Stefan says that Bandersnatch, the book he's reading, belonged to his mother, and his dad jokes with him about the format of the book itself by offering Stefan 2 choices of cereal for breakfast. On first watch, this is part of the tutorial, a simple choice with no stakes. But when viewing this as a film, this is an establishment of perspective. Stefan has been neck deep in coding his game for an unspecified amount of time. He's reached the point where he is viewing the world in the terms of a choose-your-own-adventure story. The cinematics of the choice are revealing as well, the camera lingering and continuing in the scene as if the choice isn't present. The timer counting down, personifying this out-of-nowhere anxiety over such an inconsequential choice, and the lighting sharpening and darkening on his face as the choice is eventually made. The film makes choices for you. The timer isn't counting down to a fail state or a game over. Your interaction isn't necessary for the film to continue playing, unlike a choose-your-own-adventure, where non-action is an indefinite pause or worse, a dire third choice spurned on by inaction. This recontextualizes the idea of Bandersnatch being interactive. If your button presses aren't needed, what does that say? If the film plays without you, does it tell a coherent story that way? After the demoralizing first watch, I felt the tumblers unlocking in my head at this discovery. The illusion of choice leads you to acting. My theory at the time, Bandersnatch is using the textual language of choose-your-own-adventure narratives to cinematically show Stefan's perspective. For this to be true, I would need to take a hands-off approach, setting down the controller and giving up choice during the runtime of the film, letting it play out, making choices, and seeing if that told a story. In David Fincher's Fight Club, Tyler Durden is all we know. Tyler created Edward Norton's character as a form of manipulation, a sponge for us to associate with as opposed to Tyler's more radical ideas. He provides Tyler with the mildest of scrutiny so that Tyler can dominate him with facts and logic, painting Tyler to be the smart guy, the cool guy, the the one who is always right. We are never shown alternate opinions that clash with Tyler, and instead are nudged by Norton's character to believe and give in to Tyler, even when, in the end, it was always Tyler. Similarly, Stefan facilitates the interactivity of the film as a way to push responsibility away from himself and personify his feelings of lack of control with his own life. This is stated in the film during the Jerome F. Davies documentary, where the lady lays out Davies' mind frame during his mental breakdown. Davies boiled his life down to simplistic branching paths that led to alternate realities, believing that no matter what he chose, there existed another world where that choice was different. This let him convince himself that his actions had no meaning and that he could do anything, because in the end, it didn't really matter. Throughout the film, there are several instances where Stefan pressures us into making these decisions for him. The camera work were made to feel the tension in the scene as Stefan sits silent, contemplating his options. Stefan even vocalizes this to his therapist when he worries that he's no longer in control, implicating us as the master of his decisions. It reminds me of that rather common trope in video games where the video game will present you with a choice or a narrative and then chastises you for what happens, even though you had no control to begin with. Only Stefan's attempts are even more transparent because my hands are off the wheel. This car is steering itself. Fail states are a huge way that the film frames Stefan's perspective. In the first fail state, Stefan chooses to work at Tuckersoft, and we jump cut 5 months in the future where the game receives a horrid review, 0 out of 5 stars. But we're never shown how Stefan works with this new team. We don't get to glimpse his working conditions. There's no reason that he couldn't have still worked on the game like his contemporary, Colin, while also relying on a team for extra tasks. This, along with his relationship with his father, hints at Stefan's dislike for authority. The game isn't a failure for the sake of a team effort. The game is a failure because he gave control over to Tucker. It's Tucker's line that is highlighted when Stefan makes this choice, just before Colin chimes in with a cheeky, "You chose the wrong path." The Groundhog's Day elements of the film also lend to the idea that Bandersnatch is a hands-off experience, because even when reaching these fail states, on the way back to changing a choice or redoing a section, the film is fast-forwarded through. It's not a punishment to reach these fail states. It's merely another cinematic way for the film to show Stefan's point of view and express his anxieties. And in a moment reminiscent of Life is Strange, Stefan is able to redo his conversation with Colin and Tucker while retaining the knowledge from the first conversation. Colin himself has a moment of recognition and even changes completely as a person in these 2 different attempts. At first, Colin has only heard of Bandersnatch the book, but on the second go-around, he said he's read the whole thing and gotten every ending. When the pivotal question is reached again, the film demonstrates that you are not needed by automatically highlighting the choice on the right side of the screen. All previous choices were left highlighted by default, making you think it was up to you which to choose. But in this instance, and others later on, the film chooses whichever choice it needs to tell the story. When talking to Stefan's therapist, his word choice belies something deeper than just a distrust of authority. It leans into paranoia. He says he feels like he's being monitored, and despite the well-established relationship with the therapist, he believes seeing her isn't important anymore, and that the visits are just another way for his father to establish control over him. Stefan blames his father for his mother's death. When he was only 5 years old, his mother and him were on the way to visit his grandparents. Due to his father stealing and hiding Stefan's stuffed rabbit, Stefan refused to leave the house, and his mother was late for her train. The train she ends up on derails, and she's killed. To Stefan, his father stripped him of choice. And the flashback where we see all of this occur is the only time in the film where Stefan only has one option to choose from. There's a power in that grows with each viewing. Choice is how Stefan views control. He was stripped of control, and his mother died because of it. Yes, he was just a child when that happened, but it shaped his entire worldview. I find it to be good storytelling that the Bandersnatch book belonged to his mother, and it's that book that he uses to explore his understanding of free will. It's his way of trying to make peace with it all. The seeds of conspiracy are present and watered throughout the film with various timelines, the Davies documentary, and Colin's acid-induced rants. Side note 1. Something I noticed on this most recent watch, Stefan never comes up with any of the wacky divergent paths on his own. He's always given that information first. The documentary gives him the idea to kill his father by talking about Davies killing his wife. Colin gives him the idea that he can change the past through flashbacks. And the PAX ending is fed to him by Davies and Colin. One of the major fail states occurs when Stefan is prescribed a higher dosage of his psychiatric medicine and he chooses to take it. This leads to another jump cut to the Christmas season where his game gets another bad review. The reviewer even calls it giving up and that the creator went on autopilot, two common fears that people have about going on psychiatric medicine. But we never get to see how the pills affect him, or if he tells his doctor about any mental zombification. We never get to see those conversations because they don't happen. Stefan wants to believe in this fail state as a reason to stop taking his medication altogether. It's important to understand that he was on this medication since before the film even started, and at the start of the film, his condition was getting worse. And even more important that he doesn't ask to go back to a lower dosage. He simply flushes all the pills down the toilet. The Netflix bits, when viewed in a non-interactive way, fit perfectly in the film. It's both a fun series of scenes to watch Stefan explore and discover alternate realities, but it also pushes Stefan to further distrust his therapist and lean into the choices involving Colin instead. Why would he go back to the therapist after she attacked him with weapons and he found out his life is nothing but a soundstage for a film? So what begins with Stefan distrusting his father stretches out and makes him distrust his therapist as well. Side note 2. It's fun that there's a fake crew and the actor playing Stefan in this alternate universe is named Mark. At that point, Finn Whitehead is playing an actor named Mark who's playing a character called Stefan for a fictional version of Netflix on a Netflix original film. While watching Bandersnatch Hands-Off Edition, it adheres to a typical film structure. There's a refusal of the call, ironically accepting to work at Tuckersoft, an acceptance of the call, the refusal to work at the studio, and a crossing of a threshold into a new world when Stefan dumps his pills and officially enters the world of Bandersnatch. There's also the battle between Stefan's wants and needs. His wants are established early on when the video game reviewer claims a perfect score is impossible. His needs are a little more subtle and not even self-realized until later on in the film when he reaches a false ending, flush with credits and all. What Stefan needs is to forgive his father for his actions and take back his control. He needs to be able to accept what happened and further, responsibility for his current actions. After the threshold crossing is when we're introduced to the Davies documentary and things spiral further and further from reality. He goes to Colin, and in a moment reminiscent of the monologues of Fight Club, Stefan is force-fed government conspiracy theories, acid trip rants, and near-radical breakdowns of the world that are so close to hitting some realness but so fully miss the mark. Colin believes the government is evil, check, but not because they are the ones who set up these systems of control that he's obsessed with. No, those are set up by spiritual entities from outside of reality. The government is evil because they pay people to be your relatives. Stefan doesn't question any of this. He's the Jack to Colin's Durden. Side note 3. Davies had the demon Pax, P-A-X, that terrorized him, and Stefan has the government conspiracy theory Pax, P-A-C-S. I think that's cute. Side note 4. This also leads to my favorite reviewer segment where he just goes on and on about how weird the Bandersnatch game turns out being after the accident on the balcony. Reaching the end of the hands-off experience, there's a series of scenes that so perfectly shows that this is the way to watch Bandersnatch. Colin nosedives from his balcony and Stefan is attacked by the demon Pax, but doesn't reach a fail state. He wakes up as if it were a dream. Side note 5, Stefan always wakes up with a jolt, just like he does from the stream. There are no other moments in the film that flow like this, and in this weird timeline, Colin is both AWOL but not dead. They never took acid. They never took turns jumping from the balcony. Colin is just gone. And after some interesting gardening decisions, so is Stefan's father. There's a chilling moment when Stefan calls up to his ceiling for someone to make a decision for him. This is haunting when you haven't touched the controller the entire time. The gardening leads to a unique fail state where the reviewer isn't present and a news documentary plays instead. And then Colin's line from the acid trip plays again, unprompted. How many times have you seen Pac-Man die? Doesn't bother him. He just tries again. We get our rewind. Stefan chooses to garden again, but this time Colin is back and his presence changes things just slightly enough that Stefan gets to finish the game. He speaks of working with a new sense of purpose while his father's severed head sits on his dresser. It's all very Freudian. These situations are all coiling together and we're tumbling downhill like a snowball, collecting mass, speeding up, ready to crash at the bottom. It's flowing like a film. And as a film, this entire section is immaculate. It's cathartic and tragic and magical. Stefan gets what he wants with a 5-star review, but is also a murderer unable to attain what he needs fitting perfectly into that hero's journey structure. But all of this, the act of killing the authority over him, has opened the door to his needs. The chance to redo the flashback, retrieve Rabbit from his dad's office, confront his father, and have his father be supportive. Burying his resentment from that day and not only being able to forgive his father, but himself. Because in this new form of the flashback, Stefan finds the rabbit immediately and his mother is still late. It never mattered what his father or he did on that day. His mother was always going to die. All that's left for him to choose is whether to go with her on the train or not. The train scene had me tearing up, thinking about my relationship with my father and my mother. The music here is perfect. The moment the film ends, I went and took a hot bath, listening to it on repeat. The entire film has immaculate music sense with classic ambient tunes, 80s pop reminiscent of the spectacular Phantom Pain soundtrack, and a haunting original score that I listened to while writing this script. It's hard to find a piece of art that grabs onto something inside of you. It's a film about grief, paranoia, fathers, sons, free will, and the illusion of choice, done with perfection. Each piece fitting together in tonally artistic ways, something you can sink your teeth into and keep picking out pieces with each new read. This really is such a fun film. It's built around this interesting concept, it's filled with actors that are a joy to watch, and it's held up by these amazing scenes that really do flow into one another despite the artifice of it being interactive. In fact, it only truly becomes a film when you let go of that idea of interactivity and just sit back and let whatever may come to pass. Because to pretend it's an interactive piece of media is to believe Stefan's paranoia. It's to be Stefan and believe life can be boiled down to these binary choices. To believe that horrible things in your life are the fault of one pivotal choice that you must live with forever and can never move past. That your life can be a fail state to what could have been a more successful life. It's to lose your mind a little and become a different you. Bandersnatch is not an interactive piece of media. Full stop.